Next up, podcast listeners, we have the dumbest bill in America. And do we have a lead up, Mr. Producer? Here it is. And it's the dumbest bill in America, and it is requiring college degrees for pre-K teachers. That's right. If you're a pre-K teacher in America, even if you're in a private pre-K situation, like it could be even a daycare that also has a pre-K section in the daycare, and you own that daycare, and you have 3 and 4 year olds who are in your pre-K daycare system, they would have to get college degrees. And who wants this? Oh, the Democrats want this in Congress. They want a federal pre-K college degree requirement, and it's in their $3.5 trillion communist stimulus bill that is trying to literally take over the United States of America. Matt Morgan, what do you think of this?
Brought to you by the teachers union.
Yeah, and unions in general, basically, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to unionize private companies by requiring this and saying, well, you know, your employer now needs to pay for your college degree. Folks, let me just ask you this, Matt. Why do you need a college degree to own a daycare, let alone be a pre-K teacher? There's no college degree. Why?
I have no idea. It's interesting enough, locally, we have a local college that had a daycare center. It just closed because they couldn't run it appropriately.
What a surprise.
But yeah, I mean, they're paying back their donors, right? They're paying back their supporters on this. And that goes not only to the union membership, but also to the higher ed facilities that are originally teaching these people. And they're like, oh, well, you know, you don't have to be a full-fledged teacher. You can work with children. You can be a daycare provider.
It's also amazing, too, because essentially what the federal government's saying is you were too stupid to teach people who are 5 years old and younger. You're too dumb to do that. You need a college degree to do it. And it's like, there's this thing, like you can just buy the curricula and you can just follow it if you want to do that. And I'm pretty sure it involves simple counting and colors and shapes and tying your shoes and things like that. I'm pretty sure it doesn't require a college degree. And the thing is there's this thing that Democrats love. It's called license to work. And if they can force you to get a license just in order to earn a living, then they can also do what? Take the license away when you don't comply.
Going back to what we've talked about all day, it's control. It's control and follow the money. And they also want another 4 years at your mind that hasn't been screwed up through 12th grade so far. We want you to go to college so we can indoctrinate you more. So then you can pass it on to the 2 to the 5-year-old.
Well, they also want to put the mom and pops businesses out of business.
Right. They hate private sector.
Matt, that's exactly it. The Democrat Party is trying to use this pandemic to collapse small businesses across the country. And this is one of the small businesses that deals with, of course, children. And what do they want to do? They want to first sexualize the curricula for children, and then they want to control the people that are teaching so that way they can put all their crazy communist stuff in there.
Hey, Rahm Emanuel, never let a crisis go to waste.
Right.
Exactly. I wish that, like they did in Baltimore City with the business owners that put the money into an escrow. They said, we're going to pay it, but we're going to put it in escrow. You're not giving me. I think if we had a national movement or a local movement where parents were able to say, listen, I'm not paying my property tax bill because you're not delivering what you promised me. I'm going to put it into an escrow account until you deliver the product you want, and let them then decide whether or not the product they're providing is worth that money or not. But it's tough to do that because people are afraid to have that movement. But right now, is anybody getting a good return on investment?
Oh, of course not. And they also want to unionize these people, right? Because most states, I should say many states, but certainly the blue states for sure, like ours, the teachers union, it's so all powerful, and it is of course a union. The teachers pay to belong to it and so forth. But the idea is let's unionize pre-K. Let's unionize daycare centers. And let's do that because it's more money for the union and it's more control of your children, because there's this other thing too in the Democrat Party that they don't think that you should be raising your children. And believe it or not, podcast listeners, my wife and I often see people and meet people, and it's hard to believe that, and sometimes they're even on our side, where they think that they shouldn't have to raise their own children, that someone else should raise their own children. And of course, my wife and I always have the same reaction, which is, why did you have children if you don't want to raise your children? You know, why do you, don't come after me. I understand the need for pre-K and daycare for the purposes of the fact that you have to go to work. I get it, right? But the fundamental child care person is you. And don't have children if you can't take care of them. I mean, it's really pretty straightforward. And with home offices and with home work, and the pandemic has driven that more, that you work from home, it's even better that you can spend more time with your children. So what do you guys think of that?
Well, they don't like that.
Right. Once again,
they want access to your child. They want this as another economic development thing for their donors, their supporters. And I think this is bad overall for society.
they hate parental control. They hate the family unit, and they will do anything in their power to disrupt that and to divide it. And that's what they're doing with this bill, because they want to put their big government hands in there. Because the sad part is all of these people think they're smarter than you and I. They think they're smarter than the average American. Anybody that believes in freedom, they're smarter than you. Let us run our lives. And that's exactly what this illustrates here is we know how to raise your 2-year-old to 5-year-old better than you're ever going to be. Better than you're ever going to know. So you give it over to us, and we'll take care of it. And what do we
just like
got
Loudoun
now?
County, just like Loudoun County's doing right now.
And unfortunately, it's a successful model for them. If you look at it now, Matt was talking to it earlier. You have these kids walking around outside on college campuses with masks on at 80 degrees. I'm like, and it's disappointing. But where were your parents? Did they not teach you any critical thinking at all?
And when was the last time the federal government thought that its responsibility was to be able to fund pre-K across the country, and then at the same time say you can't do it unless you get a college degree? I mean, this is folks, look, we need to push back on this federal government. I mean, this federal government is out of control. I mean, who do they think they are telling us that this is not only a requirement, because they're also going to say your child needs to have pre-K. And if your child doesn't have pre-K, then you're going to be committing, child abuse. And it's like, no, actually pre-K can occur at home if you want to. It doesn't have to be in your stupid setting where you have this college degree person who's basically trying to indoctrinate my child. Final thoughts on this, gentlemen.
I think that was the allure of Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump started to give families and individuals their freedom back to make their own decision. He understood, like Ronald Reagan did, government is not the solution to your problem. Government is the problem.
Amen.
And it wasn't that he was just some great speaker like Ronald Reagan. He just had the right ideas and principles and saying, it's not up to me. It's not up to the federal government. It's up to you as a family and as an individual to go out and produce and raise your own family. And they hate
Go
that.
ahead, Matt.
So all the regulations that have occurred with the federal government from K through 12, higher ed, I was always in their opinion, maybe you should try to perfect some of those before you move on to take on even more responsibility.
Right.
I don't think anyone would say, hey, education's a lot better than it was 10 or 20 years ago at this point. And the same with higher ed. So, get the government out of everything.
Absolutely.